All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us for this webinar today on getting started with security operations applications. I hope you're all doing well, and thank you for being a security operations customer. So I'm Sarah Wood. I work in the outbound product management team within security operations at ServiceNow, and I'm located in New York. And I'm excited to be joined by Jamie Jackson today, who will introduce herself now.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Jamie Jackson, and I am a product success manager in the security operations space here. And I'll be assisting Sarah, once we get to the piece of around the implementation best practices. So it's great to be here and nice meeting everyone.
Thanks, Jamie. And we're also happy to be joined by a team of subject matter experts here to answer any questions you might have throughout the session, as well as during our dedicated Q&A at the end. So we're really all here to support you in your implementation journey, and please ask away in terms of any questions that you might have. Now, we aren't planning to cover any forward-looking statements, but in case that does come up, our standard safe harbor notice does apply to this presentation. And today's webinar is part of the Live on ServiceNow events program. So we do encourage you to keep an eye out for future events and register. For instance, we have a security operations office hours session coming up in March. It's an open forum for you to get your questions answered by the product management team and other subject matter experts. So please do register if you're interested in that. And we also have a series of best practices and roadmap webinars that are posted in the community regularly. So we'll share the link to those in the chat as well. And before we get into the agenda for today, I just want to remind everyone that we are here to answer any of your questions. So please do use the Q&A button in Zoom at the bottom of the screen there to submit questions, and they'll either be answered there or live at the end of the session. And it is a recorded webinar, so we will share the recording afterwards in the community. And lastly, you'll receive a quick survey once we close out the webinar, and we would really appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to complete that just so that we can get your feedback and improve for next time. All right, this is our planned agenda. Most importantly, we want you to come away from this with a clear idea of your next steps towards your implementation and resources to help you get there. So really our goal is to support you and provide you with relevant resources to help ensure a successful start to your security operations implementation. And in this first part, we'll do a quick overview of security operations and highlight some key resources if you or your team members want to dive in deeper. But before we do, let's launch the first poll. We'd love to hear from you. You should see it pop up on your screen. We want to know, what are you planning to implement in your organization? So let us know by answering the poll. So it might be security incident response, vulnerability response, both, maybe something else. We'd love to hear. All right. So it looks like a lot of people planning to implement both, which is great. Excellent. All right, we'll close that out. Okay. So getting into a quick overview here, as many of you will already know, the security operations portfolio includes a suite of products that fit into these two broad areas. So on the one side, we have the ability to respond to vulnerabilities across cyber attack surfaces. And this is largely achieved through our vulnerability management solutions, including vulnerability response, as well as application and container VR. And as you can see, this covers a range of areas which are all addressed through different product offerings. And on the other side, we have the ability to respond to incidents across enterprise security functions. And this is largely achieved through our enterprise security case management solution, which is security incident response. And within that, we also have our threat intelligence solution, data loss prevention incident response, major security incident response, and more. And within our security incident response product, we really unlock automation and workflows that enable you to respond to incidents faster. And this is a high level view of what that process sort of looks like. So by integrating your various security and SIM tools, you have one central system of action to view and prioritize alerts along with that native connection to your CMDB within ServiceNow, allowing you to understand service business context and prioritize security incidents. And next, the ability to integrate with threat intelligence tools helps to enrich those incidents and better organize and orchestrate response actions and direct those responses right from within SIR, followed by post-incident workflows like completing configurable reports. And on the attack surface management side, we have vulnerability response, which gives you that visibility, prioritization, and automation of vulnerabilities across the enterprise. And this starts with integrating scanners, setting up your vulnerability calculators and assignment rules to enable automatic risk scoring and grouping of vulnerabilities, as well as assignment to the right teams across security and IT. And in addition, we have solution recommendations and patch orchestration, as well as workflows for reassignments and requesting exceptions and deferrals, which can connect with our own ServiceNow integrated risk management solution as well. And lastly, rescans can confirm whether vulnerabilities have been remediated and close them out. So we really feel that understanding security operations is an important early step in implementation so that the right outcomes and functionality can be prioritized. And so these are the resources we think will help your team get up to speed and remain informed about SecOps applications. So we'll have many more resources throughout, and we will share them. The links are in the chat so that you can browse them at your own leisure. So first off, we have product documentation, which is where you'll find all the latest product information and release notes, as well as other helpful content like setup guides and instructions on learning about entitlements. And then we have our community YouTube channel. So there are a ton of videos across YouTube, and these particular channels are a go-to resource if you want the latest and greatest demo videos for products and any other live on ServiceNow content. Next, we have our Now Learning platform. So this is where your team can use learning credits towards virtual on-demand or instructor-led courses and also obtain certifications. So we have regularly updated SecOps fundamentals course and SIR and VR implementer courses, as well as relevant different learning paths. So I have also created a community post that you'll see here, which includes links to a whole bunch of recommended training for SecOps, and we'll share that in the chat as well. And then we have our security operations community. And this is really a central hub for SecOps users around the world, where you can share resources and best practices and post questions to get solutions from ServiceNow experts. We also regularly post articles and blogs there about the product and upcoming webinars like this one. So we do recommend that you and your team subscribe and get those updates regularly. And our quick start guides shown here as well for VR and SIR are a really good reference at this early stage. There's lots of helpful links within there in terms of getting started with these applications. And lastly, in this section is our developer site. So this is our developer ecosystem, which is a great resource for any of your more technical team members, but really it's open to all levels of individuals. And it has more detailed technical documentation. It's also where your team can sign up for the free developer program, where they can collaborate with other ServiceNow developers and gain access to a personal developer's sandbox instance, where they can download ServiceNow applications and experiment with the Now platform. So another great resource to check out. All right, so next up, we do want to spend a bit of time on why you should begin your implementation if you haven't already, and what kind of value you can expect to see by getting started. So we're going to open it up by launching another poll. We do want to hear from you again. We want to know what are the top desired business outcomes that you would love to achieve with your security operations implementation. So might be more related to the security incident side, vulnerabilities, um, maybe some other ones that you can feel free to add in the chat. I think I might have seen someone's hand go up, but feel free to post your question in the chat or in the Q&A. All right. A couple of responses still coming in, so I'll just give it another few seconds there before closing that out. Okay. So lots of interest across the board, and that's not a surprise to us. Now, the good news is that you can certainly achieve all of these things depending on your priorities. And our customers certainly have been able to achieve these types of results within just 6 months of going live with security operations products. So we want to highlight a few of these here. For instance, analysts closing almost 2 times the number of security incidents on average at just 6 months of usage. Really amazing results, and cutting mean time to remediate a vulnerability in half in just 6 months. And our best-in-class customers are achieving even greater results. So these are the types of things we really want to help you achieve, and we're here to help you achieve. And we've been through it ourselves. So we at ServiceNow are customer zero. So we moved from using manual labor-intensive processes to respond to vulnerabilities to using vulnerability response, leading to over 99% accuracy in assigning vulnerabilities, high SLA attainment, and 85% gain in productivity. So really, really great results on the VR side. And when it comes to SIR, or security incident response, our internal security has gained a lot of value in moving from manual processes to being able to prioritize alerts and automate processes, leading to over $800,000 in staffing cost savings and thousands of hours saved. So again, we at ServiceNow are active users of our product, and we are continuing to implement new functionality and achieve even better results every day. Now, to get to those types of results, setting your vision and outcomes is a really critical first step in your implementation. So these are just some examples of the types of outcomes that you can choose to prioritize in your security operations implementation. And many customers will choose one or two outcomes that relate to their particular key challenges in order to prioritize those for their implementation and be able to select appropriate metrics to measure their success and really get to value quickly. And so there are a number of resources on Now Create that we'll share and that Jamie will be speaking to shortly, which include information on these outcomes and metrics that you can also reference. And so as you continue to explore the value that you can get out of security operations applications and create a vision for your organization, these are some of the resources that we do want to highlight for you. So first and foremost, the Customer Success Center is really your one-stop shop where you can search across all ServiceNow resources, find leading practices resources, different tools and calculators, event services, all sorts of things. Learn about the Now Value methodology at ServiceNow, which is a framework to envision, create, and validate value from your ServiceNow products and champion your success. So that's a great hub for customers to go to. The Value Calculator is a resource that you'll find there in the Customer Success Center. That's worth calling out because it is a quick and easy way to see the annual business value that you can achieve using ServiceNow. So it allows you to calculate the value of using multiple different solutions or just focusing on security operations, like is shown here. So just asks you a few questions where you can fill out the answers or move the sliding scale along to see what the estimated annual value is. Next up, what if you have ServiceNow Impact? So this is an acceleration tool to accelerate value, really maximize the value that you get out of your investment with ServiceNow. There are a range of packages that have different offerings, and so this slide shows a little bit more detail around the possible offerings that you might have or you might be interested in. And so this is essentially the total package with the full range. So you'll see things like having a designated squad, having different value recommendations, added technical support, and special discounts on things like training and expert services. If you are interested in more information about ServiceNow Impact, you can reach out to your account executive or your customer success manager. Now, getting into the next section, I will be handing it off to Jamie shortly to provide more context on the security operations implementation journey. But before that, we are going to launch our final poll for today's session. And in this poll, we would like to hear about your implementation journey. So in terms of where you're at in that journey, are you implementing now or in this quarter? We're planning to implement later in the year, or maybe nothing planned yet? Let us know. See some responses still coming in. All right, so most people planning to implement now. And some people planning to implement this year. A few not planning to implement. That's fine. We hope that after this webinar, you will have some more resources and get started with your implementation. All right, I will hand it over to Jamie Jackson now.
All right, so we're going to go through this kind of quickly so we can get to the Q&A, but it looked like we have about a 50-50 implementing soon and implementing now. For those that have not started the implementation, you have a couple of different ways, as you see on the screen, to go about doing that. Preferably with an implementation partner or even the ServiceNow expert services that we provide, which will help you through that implementation, and we'll show you how to get to a partner that has security operations experience, and then obviously through our expert services as well. Self-implementation, if you don't have the budget to hire a partner and you want to do it yourself, it can be done. There's a lot of risk involved with that. Your people need to be trained and so on and so forth. All these artifacts that we provided you are just going to be that much more important. But just know that it's success is usually defined by having some sort of implementation assistance. All right, next slide. All right, so depending on how you guys are going to go about implementing security operations, and it looked like most of you are implementing both of them. So what's the priority there? Are you implementing vulnerability response first, security incident response first, or perhaps both of them in parallel if they're separate teams? It doesn't really matter. It just depends on what the organization's priorities are and how you guys want to go about doing that. Within vulnerability response, there's two primary sister applications to that, which are included with application vulnerability response, as well as configuration compliance, which gives you the ability to not only import your vulnerability scans, but those compliance scans that come in. So depending on which one you go to, you can start with one or the other, or both at the same time, and then move up to application VR, configuration compliance, and then security incident response has a plethora of other enhancement tools to leverage as well, like threat intelligence, major security incident, and so on. All right, next slide. All right, so this is a very, very high level roadmap of a maturity model. However, this is really subject to your current state of how you guys are running vulnerability response, in particular, what we're talking about here. So if I was to go into an implementation, the very first thing I would ask is, what are you guys doing right now? Are you guys just sending out spreadsheets to your folks to do vulnerability tracking or whatever it may be. Or maybe you have some other tool that you're leveraging. How are you assigning out vulnerabilities at this time? How are you tracking risk acceptance? And then based on what your current state is, as Sarah mentioned before, let's define 5 key performance measurements or metrics that we can say, okay, in 6 months, I want to be able to do this and be able to provide leadership a better enterprise view of risk and provide some ROI on the tool itself, whatever it may be. So again, this is totally subjective to where you are at right now, high level. And this is not only vulnerability response in particular, is not only a maturity of vulnerability response and vulnerability management as well. It can also affect the CMDB. So we know that they go hand in hand together. So vulnerability response is going to force the hand of the CMDB to get it up to kind of speed, and where you want to be in the CMDB in parallel to the vulnerability response can be one of those goals. All right, next slide. Security incident response, same kind of concept. However, with security incident response, if I was to walk into an implementation, the first thing I would ask is, where are security incidents being generated from? We know that there's a whole plethora of sources that a security incident can be created from. Everybody thinks about the SIM and alerts and events coming from there, but they can come from a multitude of other places. They can come from a normal incident being escalated to a security incident. They can come from a catalog item. They can come from an email. They can come from multiple different ways. So what are the sources of my security incident that I'm going to start with in particular? And maybe it is just your SIM, or maybe it's just an escalation, or maybe I'm going to put some catalog items on my portal to report security incidents or whatever it may be. So based on where a security incident can be created, again, current state will then essentially adopt the maturity model based on that. And this is just an example, very, very high level. Typically on the first step, we integrate with a SIM to start out with. We're not doing for orchestration or anything of that nature. And then we define a handful of playbooks. What are the majority, especially because response time is one of the key metrics that everybody wants to improve on. And playbooks are going to get you there. What are my steps, or what are the incidents that my security analysts are doing every single day? What's the volume of them? And let's get a playbook and automate this as much as possible, so it's very minimal manual input to it. All right, next slide. And this is a very, very busy slide, but these are all those details. Again, those first couple of slides itself are very, very high level. Here are some details on what you can actually look at from a step 1, step 2. So for instance, with vulnerability response, you can say, okay, I'm going to import, what am I going to start with here? Am I going to start with, what am I going to import from the scanner? Am I going to import my business critical systems, my infrastructure, my highest risk stuff, internet facing? What am I going to actually start with to import into ServiceNow? And the very next question you should ask is that data in ServiceNow right currently? Is it in the CMDB? And it's not, why isn't it? Is Discovery not running, or is Tenable or Rapid7 or whatever it may be going to be the source of record and populate the CMDB with it? So those are some items that you need to think about on as far as where you're going to start, and then move forward from there. What does my risk acceptance process look like? Can I implement that in the tool to get started with, or do I need to skip that to the crawl and walk stage, and so on and so forth? Again, all of these will be available to you, and we have tons of links around this as far as artifacts go to get you guys started. But the key thing here is to define those metrics, as Sarah said, once you get started, so you can point to something in 6 months and then move to the next step. All right, next slide, Sarah. Same thing with security incident response. So what are those initial playbooks I'm going to implement? Or what are those initial sources that I'm going to implement for security incident? Am I going to have escalations from an INC to an SIR? I'm going to have just alerts coming from my SIM. Am I going to have catalog items where people can request or report security incidents or whatever it may be? The sources there, and then the playbooks associated with those types of security incidents. How many am I going to have? Playbooks are going to drive the resolution time or in half, essentially. So you want to make sure you get those going, and then you can provide metrics on the actual implementation time. All right, next slide. So next thing we're going to go over, and I'll have Sarah do a mini demo on how, as far as how to get to a partner in ServiceNow or expert services, and Now Create for that matter. If you already are working with a partner, totally fine. If you don't have a partner, or even if you do have a partner and you haven't started implementing, one of the big things to identify is if that partner obviously has the security operations lines, or if they have experience with that and they have certifications around that. So we know that they have implemented this stuff before. So Sarah, can you go ahead and go through that and show them how to identify a partner?
Yes, I will do that now. I'm just going to pull up the partner finder. So this is the landing page here. And as you can see, you can search directly for a partner if you choose, or you can follow the guided steps here with the Get Started button. So once you do that, you could choose from a range of different options in terms of the type of partner that you want. And in this case, we'll take a look at our implementation options. And then you can narrow it down to specific regions as well. And then you can select different product areas. So we can choose vulnerability response and security incident response here. And then we get our results. So a range of, we can see over 200 partners here for specializing in vulnerability response and security incident response, which is great. And then the nice thing is you can actually view a detailed partner profile for any of these partners that come up. And this is where, Jamie was mentioning, you can get into the actual certifications of the partner. You can see the customer satisfaction on other implementations, contact them. And as you kind of go through the details, you'll see different, achievements in terms of number of deployments. Again, different certifications that are relevant. So really great tool. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Jamie.
No, just this is perfect. Just wanted to hone in on that to make sure that when we are selecting a partner, we're selecting the partner that has the qualifications for doing it. And then obviously, if you move to ServiceNow Expert Services, that's another option as well.
Yeah, so I'll pull that back up. So we've got Expert Services here.
And then in addition to implementation, so before we go further right there, implementation, obviously we're going there, we get it done, we get the implementation going, we go live, we're on our crawl stage or whatever it may be. We all know that that's not the last step in the process. It just doesn't turn on and work till the end of time. There's post go live support for some extent, and that's where impact would come into play to help you guys continue to mature the product, continue to mature your processes, or some sort of go live or post go live advisory support, whether that's from a partner, ServiceNow, or whatever it may be. Those are available to you as well. And then lastly, on the Now Create. So if you're wondering if you've worked with a partner before, if you worked with ServiceNow during implementations, this is essentially the methodology that we leverage to do the implementations. You'll essentially see how it gets started with the build, process documentation or workshops, creating the stories. Every single step in the methodology is in this Now Create. So if you're wondering what your partner is doing at what step, they likely follow something of this nature. You can go in here and we have artifacts available to you guys and to them to leverage for process documentation, like starter stories. Everything and anything you can think of is in these Now Create. So this is a really, really great, powerful repository of a lot of artifacts. All right, next slide. And here's a summary. Again, more resources as far as what we can leverage. I want to call out real quick the SecOps community. The community site is fantastic. There's a lot of folks in there. When I was learning ServiceNow, especially security operations, if I didn't know a question or I had a problem, I went in there and searched and somebody had already done it or already asked that question. It's almost inevitable. And if not, everybody's really responsive. So you will get a response in there. So take advantage of that community site as it's very active.
Yeah. Great point. And then before we get to our dedicated Q&A portion, we did want to mention our knowledge event coming up May 7th to 9th in Las Vegas. So if you're not already aware, this is an exciting annual event for our customers to come together and share knowledge, best practices, network, and attend training and other sessions. So I believe the early bird deadline to register is tomorrow. So please do feel free to scan the QR code to learn more and to register if you're interested. Thank you all so much once again for joining us today. Please do take a minute to complete the survey that will pop up after the webinar is closed out, and we look forward to seeing you at future events. Have a great rest of the day.